1, 2, you know what to do. Good evening, ladies and gents. Welcome to the Selection Saturday Kickoff Show on both Facebook and YouTube. I had to stop in mid-breath for a second. Like, what are we doing? Helmet picks tonight as we continue on with Week 8. And right now, as it stands, I am a perfect 7 for 7 this week. So congrats to everybody who did their part in putting me there. Particularly Rice, who last night beating Tulsa did surprise me. But it was the manner in which they did that completely surprised me. 42-10 over Tulsa. And James Madison, who continue to roll. They've won, I believe, a total, dating back to last year, I believe it's 9 straight victories, 7 this year alone. And while the transition rule is still in play that will keep them out of the bowl again, out of the bowl bonanza again, they've already earned their place as an at-large team on the helmet tree not once, but twice. As you probably already know, we have the helmet tree whiteout, the first such whiteout ever attempted, where right now, at this very point in time, we have a total of 85 FBS schools and 22 schools from the FCS all lined up. More could be potentially added on between now and the time that I unveil it on Black Friday, November the 24th. The helmet tree whiteout will be good for a couple of weeks, at least right on up until the bowl season, and of course the traditional helmet tree with all the bowl participants and close to, if not all, of the FCS playoff participants, plus James Madison and plus Jacksonville State. And more could also be added on there too. So, let's get down to the business of doing the helmet picks for tomorrow, for your Saturday on this Week 8. We begin with a couple of teams who are in dire needs of wins right now. Baylor and Cincinnati both coming in 2-4. Cincinnati still looking for the initial breakthrough win in the Big 12. It's a tall order. Baylor is about as Pekin Valley gets. But I tell you what, if you lose to Oklahoma, that's one thing. You lose to Iowa State, that's another thing. Suddenly I'm beginning to wonder and maybe question the quote-unquote catitude. Well, when you're 2-4, you have 9 lives. But in case of the Cincinnati Bearcats, they only need 4 more wins to be bowl eligible, and time is starting to tick. It's go time, Cincinnati. Do your due diligence and put one in the win column. Up next, Western Michigan and Ohio. Speaking of bowl eligible, an Ohio win will put them there. They had their chance to do it last week at Northern Illinois, and it didn't happen. This time they're back at home, and this time they're taking care of business. Going with the Ohio Bobcats over the Broncos of Western Michigan in that matchup. Now, moving on to the FCS. South Dakota, perhaps the surprise of the FCS right now. Taking on the winless Indiana State Sycamores, and from the tilt of the head to the grabbing of the helmet, you pretty much know who I'm picking. It is, in fact, South Dakota. Obviously a no-brainer there unless SDAC, as I'm now referring to them. It's a CBS initial. You might understand it. SDAC. Like North Dakota would be NDAC, SDAC would be South Dakota. So there you go. They best not sleep on the job tomorrow. That's all I got to say. Speaking of sleeping on the job, I often wonder which team's going to show up tomorrow when Akron visits Bowling Green. Bowling Green's my kryptonite. I pick against them, they win. I pick with them, and they lose. And Akron, same deal. We had a case earlier this year where Buffalo ended up losing to Akron in overtime. This is the Mid-American Conference, ladies and gentlemen. That conference on a whole has been nothing but kryptonite. Both of those teams are kryptonite to me. They will be that way for the rest of the season. Somebody's got to go. Bowling Green, I'm looking at you. Or could I be looking at Akron? The helmet says Bowling Green, so you better pull through. Charlotte, East Carolina. East Carolina, I think, has found their footing. Charlotte's still looking for theirs. Gonna roll with the Pirates in that one. Back to... the next pick after this one is another FCSer. We'll get to that shortly. Louisiana Monroe and Georgia Southern. You know, it's funny. Georgia Southern has the most plain Janus uniforms. I said Janus. Jane-ish. That sounds kind of raw and raunchy, don't you think? Janus? Anyway, Georgia Southern's sort of the flip side of Penn State. The inverse of Penn State. Only difference is it's blue helmets with Navy numbers, I should say. Navy helmets with white numbers. There you go, Brandon. But I've never used the helmet. I never did. And I'm still not going to, even though I'm taking Georgia Southern. I will right that injustice should they go bowling this year. Count on that, okay? Hold me to it, guys, if you're watching this. Now we get to the SCS pick for this week. Southeast Missouri and Tennessee Tech. Both don't have very good records, but there's one thing I do know. And I don't know the quarterback's name. I had to do a quick skim. I just gotten home from work. I'm still in my work clothes, if you can believe it. And rounding up the helmets together, I had to do a check on this matchup in terms of not only records, which are losing records, number one. Number two, the next thing up the line is looking for a stat that jumps out at you. Well, it's the quarterbacks. And while I won't give you the names, I will tell you that Southeast Missouri State does have a quarterback that's thrown 10 touchdowns to 2 picks, while Tennessee Tech has a guy that's thrown 2 TDs and 6 picks. Something tells me Southeast Missouri State's going to win this one. It may not come down to passing, but who knows? SEMO, for those of you who like to initially speak things. Southeast Missouri State over Tennessee Tech. Now we go to South Florida and UConn. South Florida, this one could go either way. UConn right now, I don't know if... It's a tough call. It really is a tough call, number one. And number two, the records aren't all that great. Chances are both of them are probably going to be sitting at home watching the Bowl Blitz. Somebody's got to, win this one. I'm going to go with South Florida. They got the better record. I don't think Lightning's going to strike twice for UConn, having to win every game down the stretch to go to a bowl game. I mean, it's going to take some magic for it to happen, but when you've won only one game all year and you're past the midway point of the season, trouble and treachery is afoot. So we're going with South Florida over Yukon. Buffalo and Kent. Here's another one from the Mid-American Conference that could pose problems for me in the pick department. Buffalo's only won 2 games. Kent has only won once. Maybe they should call themselves the Golden Flickers because they ain't got no flash. Taking Buffalo. I waited all year to say that, and it only came to me in mere seconds. So there you go. Put that helmet away. South Carolina and Missouri. I need a moment here. Today's show brought to you by Coca-Cola. Gotta wet the whistle here. Throat's getting a little dry and a fan's blowing in the side of my head here. What was I picking against? South Carolina and Missouri. South Carolina right now is in some dire straits. And no, I ain't talking about money for nothing and your chicks for free. Although if I mention chicks for free and Gamecocks, that's a whole nother can of worms, and we've done enough of that this year already. We'll use up that last can when South Carolina plays Jacksonville State, okay? Anyway, South Carolina. I'm going to hell for that, by the way. South Carolina, 2-4 right now. And it's not looking good for the Gamecocks. It's especially not good when you got to go to Columbia and you're going up against Brady Cook and the red-hot Missouri Tigers, who have bigger aspirations than what their bowl bid right now may give them. I like to think the machine's going to keep rolling in Columbia. I'm going to take Missouri at home over South Carolina, which now brings us to, here we go, back to the Mid-American Conference, Eastern Michigan and Northern Illinois. If I remember correctly, in my quick skim of the records, I believe Eastern Michigan is 4-3 and Northern Illinois is 3-4. In a conference where I believe they will only take 4 teams out of the Mid-American Conference. It's a dog-eat-dog conference, as all conferences are. Every game will be fought for, and this one's no different. Eastern Michigan, as far as I know, would love nothing better than to continue their bowl streak, and they may still do it. I believe it's, 3 years or 4 years in a row for those guys. But Northern Illinois at 3-4, they beat Ohio last week, so there's a little bit of a momentum starting there in DeKalb. And since the game's being played in DeKalb, why stop there? I'm going to go with the Huskies. I'm going to go with Northern Illinois over Eastern Michigan in that one. Now we go back to the FCS. We're off on the road to Rhode Island. It's now become a Selection Saturday Kickoff show tradition. For the sake of one of my listeners and viewers, who's a Rhode Island guy, a gentleman by the name of Patrick Golden. How you doing, sir? Rhode Island is visiting Reese Poffenbarger and the Great Danes of Albany. Albany. It ain't Albany. Albany? Playoffs? Sorry, had to go there. It's kind of where we're heading with these two, as a matter of fact. Rhode Island, I don't know the records right off the top of my head like I do with some of the other games, but this is a must-win for both of them. Albany, it's tough. It's tough, I think. With Rhode Island, you're not sure what team you're going to get. I mean, potentially it's a team that once they get on a roll, you start riding with them, and when you do, that's when they start losing. But this is one of those games here, I think, where I'm going to go ahead and take Rhode Island in this one. Not because that we're on the road to it, because they're on the road to Albany. And they need to find themselves back in the top 25 to at least be in the conversation for the FCS playoffs, which right now the margin of error is getting very, very slim. New Hampshire is visiting Stony Brook. This is a no-brainer. New Hampshire over Stony Brook in that one. New Hampshire, by the way, is 3-3, and I believe they're still ranked in the FCS top 25, which I believe is the coaches' poll in the FCS. I was going to go, I tell you what I'm going to do. I don't even have the helmets for this. Wow. Tell you what. We'll get to that shortly. We're skipping Toledo and Miami of Ohio. And for good reason. It is the closest thing to a Big One game that we're going to have. So we're going to bring them both over here after the rest of the picks. Stay tuned. Right now, as we skip over Toledo and Miami of Ohio, we have UTSA and FAU, another initially speaking game involving two teams who'd rather, be a part of the witness protection program, if nothing else, because people are not sure who the heck they are, name-wise. But both of these teams, last I checked, have identical records, I believe. I think, they're 3-3 or 4-3 or something like that. But I like, even though FAU did its due diligence and won a game last week that I really wasn't sure that they were capable of winning, but not only did they win, they blew out whoever team it is I can't think of, like 56-14 FAU. Yeah. This time around, however, they're back at home, and they're about to get road-runned over by UTSA, who have some work to do if they need to get back in the business of bowling. The time starts now. Going with the Roadrunners over the Owls in that one. Eastern Kentucky and Gardner-Webb. I'm going to go ahead and say this right now. I think I jinxed Gardner-Webb's season. I picked them to beat East Carolina earlier in the year. And, of course, they got their doors blown off by the Pirates. Gardner-Webb hasn't done well since that game. So here they take on an Eastern Kentucky team that right now I believe is sitting at 500, or at least they're either a game over or they're at 500. Whatever the case, I'm taking Eastern Kentucky in that one, which now brings us to a game that I allegedly skipped over. My bad. We're still in the FCS, by the way. I skipped over two games, one of which I'm getting back to later, and one that I'm getting back to now. Towson College and William and Mary. This one's a no-brainer here, too. I'm going to ride with Mike Tomlin University. William and Mary, last I checked, I believe they got a winning record. But it's not the same William and Mary as they were a year ago. They're still in the conversation, as far as we know, in the FCS, as far as potentially being a playoff team, I should say. And there was another game that I skipped over. Now we get back to the Mid-American Conference. We missed one. So we'll take care of it right now, mainly because one team's only won one game and the other has won more than they have, and that's Central Michigan over Ball State. Enough said on that one. Which now brings us to Hawaii and New Mexico. down in Albuquerque. And I hope Hawaii didn't get lost, otherwise they would have made the left turn. Hawaii right now, I believe, has won, 2 games and has lost 5. New Mexico, not that much better. For some godly reason, there's a part of me that wants to think Hawaii would win this game, but they don't do too good stateside. But with that being said, I'm going to go with the Lobos. They're playing in one of my favorite stadiums that few people are even aware of. And I got to give a shout out, an Instagram shout out to a new follower, a gentleman by the name of Wes Henderson, who is watching this, I'm hoping. Started following me today. He's a Lobo alum, and I hope your boys do their due diligence and try to get on some sort of win streak that could put them in the conversation for a bowl bid. Speaking of potential bowl bids, these next 2 games in the Sun Belt Conference are gigantic because both of them have teams, all 4 teams are playing 500 ball. Appalachian State is against Old Dominion. And this is going to be interesting, considering that I picked Appalachian State to beat Coastal Carolina, and they didn't win. This is a troublesome pick for me. It had been a troublesome pick anyway. That was until my helmet guy, Kevin Martin, came to the rescue and sent me this. That's right. New to the inventory. Brand spanking new Old Dominion. We're going to ride with this one. And if they win, then Kevin should get a cane ball. 3 shout-outs in one show. There you go. We're going to take Old Dominion at home over Appalachian State, and if nothing else, it serves as a wake-up call to App State to get their butts in gear. Speaking of Coastal Carolina, they're visiting Arkansas State. Arkansas State, I honestly didn't think they were going to be cut out to be 3-3, but in the Sun Belt Conference, if I may quote George Wendt in his role as Norm Peterson. I said George. I wish my brother George was here. How many more Bugs Bunny references am I going to throw into this show? We've already made the left turn at Albuquerque. Now we're doing this. George Wendt is Norm Peterson. Once upon a time had said, and I quote, "It's a dog-eat-dog world, and I'm wearing milk-bone underwear." Let's hope it's thermals. I'm going to go with Coastal. I'm going to go with the Chanticleers. I could have easily broken out the teals or the blacks, but I broke out the whites instead. Oh, shameless plug. Helmet Tree Whiteout. This will be on it. And you could say the same for the next opponent or the next team that I'm going to hold up for you, Utah State and San Jose State. Both of them have white helmets. Okay, I just dropped 2 bombs on you guys, but I'm going to take Utah State on the road. San Jose State, by the way, 2-5. Utah State needs to start winning here. I don't know how many wins they need. Certainly more than what San Jose State's got, but if you want to party with the big boys, you better show up the rest of the season. And now we come to 3 games involving 3 teams, all with 5 wins. We're going to start things off with UNLV hosting Colorado State. I am so excited for the Runnin' Rebels right now. I never thought I would see the day where I would be talking about UNLV and a bowl bid in the same breath. Well, guess what? It's go time. Take care of business down there, will you? UNLV over Colorado State. It's going to be close. I mean, Colorado State has proven that they can play with anybody. They beat Boise State last week on a Hail Mary. So, yeah, It's going to be close. It's going to be hard fought. But in the end, UNLV should have the bowl bid in hand and the T-shirt around on their backs, I should say. Now we have, really, I think the one game that is going to earn more brownie points for everything leading up to it than the game itself. Army and LSU. LSU, I forgot to put the ranking down for this. Not that that means anything. Ranking is one thing. But in case you haven't checked it out, if you're an LSU fan, you already know this. If you're an Army fan, you already know this. But LSU is honoring the Black Knights by decorating their end zones, not in purple and gold, the typical traditional purple and gold that you normally see in an LSU home game. But LSU just completely won all the points by decorating their end zones in camo. I may hate Brian Kelly, but I love what LSU did. And while Army may not have a chance at beating LSU, that's not the point. LSU won't just win the game on the field, they'll win it off the field too. Give them a hand, guys. Well done. I wish all teams would do this with the service academies. Simply because I honor the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force when I do my helmetry every year. And that's enough for me for now. I would love it. In fact, I suggest it and I implore it. If you got those schools on your schedule in the coming seasons, do your part. Honor them, not just with a decal on the back of your helmets or the flag on your jerseys. Let it be known that you support the armed forces, all branches, all military branches, everybody. Do your due diligence. It's a phrase that I've enjoyed saying. Just do it. And the last pick before I get to Toledo and Miami of Ohio. Georgia State with their 5 wins against 4-2 Louisiana. It's a big one. Really big. It's in the Sun Belt. And it's a tough pick. It's a tough pick. Georgia State, incidentally, we got some new inventory from my man Kevin. 2 new Georgia State helmets. One in which will be put on the helmetry this year. They're already slated for the whiteout. We've had the whiteout one for a while, but we have the blue one, we have the black one now. The blue one's likely going to get the distinction of being on the tree, but enough about that. Let's get to the game in the pick. Georgia State, I think, is going to have to wait a week. I'm going to take the Ragin' Cajuns at home so that they can have their shot at possibly going to a bowl game. Now, if you'll excuse me a moment. Where are they? Here we go. Toledo and Miami. Toledo, 6-1. Miami of Ohio, 6-1. If there is a difference to this game, it's the quarterbacking of Brett Gabbert. And I think it's Gabbert that is going to steal this one off of Toledo. That'll put his name in the conversation among college football's great quarterbacks this year. It's a name that you probably won't recognize, but you will when bowl season gets here. We're going to take Miami of Ohio over Toledo, and that, my friends, will do it. If we can just get the thing to play. That will do it for this edition. The helmet edition at that of the Selection Saturday Kickoff Show. Brought to you on Facebook and YouTube. We'll see you back tomorrow morning for the lanyard selections, including that huge Penn State-Ohio State game. Until then, PR signing off. Good night, everybody.